everybody. We're really happy to be in this talk.
Yeah, welcome to our talk about our journey with PostgreSQL and how we build our business based upon PostgreSQL databases. In this talk, we take you on all the stuff that we've learned from PostgreSQL and how we operated on it during the years that we use it. The content will be a first introduction of Ellen and me. We'll talk a little bit of history of the DIC, the tech landscape, and why PostgreSQL plays such a crucial role in this. How we grew exponentially with PostgreSQL, the reasons of migration from a single node to a Flex server. Ellen will then discuss the PostgreSQL features that we use and that really enables us to do the things that we do. And then we summarize the key takeaways of this. So first, let me introduce you to my great colleague, Ellen Palacio. He's our head of data engineering. He joined the company a year ago. Really was a very, very important person now in the company. Improved the performance of the operations a lot and helped us to migrate to the cloud. He's also the author of the book Distributed Data System with Azure Databricks. For myself, I'm Bob Buisman. I'm the Data Operations Director, overseeing all data-related operational activities for our data products. I have an extensive background in setting up and designing business intelligence environments, and I'm very lucky in my current job to bring all that experience together and building a sustainable team. So what is actually the Digital Innovation Center and how did it became what it is today? It was founded in 2017 by Ruben Scheurs as a digital media consultancy. Within a year, he managed to grow the team from only himself to 5 people. And soon realized that data is a big gold mine that was not yet touched by other companies. So the first version of the data-driven product that we have, Source Data Monitoring, was delivered to Heineken. And this is also the point where we made the choice for PostgreSQL database technology. It is used by open and supported by a big open source community, which we really love, and provides a lot of new features constantly. It is also a database technology used by students and young professionals who want to move into the field of data, which proved very valuable to us because we could hire a lot of talented young people already familiar with PostgreSQL. We became a true data-driven company by letting go all traditional media consultancy and really focused on data-driven products only. This came known to Ubiquity, who acquired Digital Decisions a little year ago, early 2020. This enabled us to grow really rapidly and offered a lot of opportunities for us to develop more data-driven products. Soon we grew to 30 people and had to lift our data operations to the Azure cloud environment in order to remain our scalability and flexibility that we so hard needed in a fast-growing company. PostgreSQL was still the database technology that we love and that we always used. At the moment, we expanded to more than 50 people. So that's in 5 years, we became a company of 50 people. So what does it actually mean in numbers? Interestingly, we have, with PostgreSQL, on that PostgreSQL database, basically, we analyzed 2.7 trillion of impressions from advertisements on the internet. Each month, we add 70 million of rows of data to our PostgreSQL database. We have more than 40 plus live databases that are actively queried and updated on a daily basis by our analysts and by our data engineers. Not only that, but also 60 plus Power BI dashboards gather data daily from the PostgreSQL Server databases. These are on-demand requests by our media analysts who have the data to their disposal at any time. It means also that we have to store 2 terabytes of data on the PostgreSQL Server. And we are able to run a smooth operations despite all those things that are happening at the same time. I think, Alan, it's now up to you to tell a little bit more about the tech landscape and how PostgreSQL fits into that.
Thanks so much, Bob. I'm really happy to be here talking with you in this conference about our incredible journey. So, as Bob mentioned, one of the things that is the most important for us is to be able to work with data that we receive from different sources, which are basically advertising agencies. So, to do this, we have reporting analysts that analyze this information, and therefore they need to normalize all these different myriads of formats and types of files we receive into a unified, normalized set of data that our BI analysts can analyze and then be able to deliver to the clients. So in order to be able to power that clean normalization and enrichment process that we do over these files, we first start the journey with Azure Databricks. So within Azure Databricks, we are able to have different types of notebooks that our data engineering team maintains and that the reporting analysts use in order to be able to normalize the data. So it's kind of like a concept in which we create products for the reporting analysts to be able to process this data. And once the data has been normalized and they have verified that it complies with the standards, we then move this data into the next stage, which is the PostgreSQL database. So as Bob has mentioned, this is a really important part for us because it's a place where we not only store the data that we have processed in Databricks, but we also do further transformations that we will see in the next slides in order to enrich this data with existing data that we have on the database, and then do certain operations in which we make use of the existing data throughout the different databases in order to be able to serve this data to our final stage, which is basically the visualization part where our BI analyst teams work in order to be able to deliver this great analysis in terms of digital advertisement spending to our clients. And for that, we use Power BI, which has a great match with the tech stack that we have. So in order to be able to effectively manage the data that we have in the database, and in order to be able to run operations and scale operations, we have also incorporated very recently the use of Airflow. So Airflow is a scheduling and monitoring tool that allows us to run operations in the Postgres database in order to be able to transform the data in such a way that before we have not been able to do. So our complete picture looks like this. I mean, our journey starts on Databricks, where we reporting analysts process massive amounts of data monthly. They verify that everything is according to the standards is auditable. They move these to the PostgreSQL Server database, where we store our data, where we enrich our data further. And then we use Airflow to run different types of operations and script. And finally, we serve this into the Power BI. So basically, this is our infrastructure. So heading back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Alan. Great explanation of our tech landscape and great summary of how those elements fit together. I would like to talk about that we migrated last year from a single node server to a Flex server. Those elements of Databricks and Airflow were recently added elements to our tech landscape. Before that, we were able to orchestrate and to process all of our operations on a PostgreSQL database. That puts a big toll on the PostgreSQL databases, especially with the use of trigger and trigger functions. So queries took a long time to finish on our single node server. We saw a decreased performance on write activities, and we had still a relatively small number of databases needed to be migrated. At the time, we were also experimenting a lot with new prototypes of new prototype templates and products, all on the PostgreSQL databases. And with a relatively small number of databases, our migration is, of course, easier than with a lot of databases that need to be migrated. So we reached out to the Microsoft support team for PostgreSQL on Azure. and they helped us to select the new database that we really needed. Still being in love with PostgreSQL, we never doubted or never thought about using another database technology. We got the advice to switch from a single node server to a Flex server. That enabled us also to migrate from a version 10 to a version 13.4. Still preview version at that moment, so I think we were one of the first in the world who used PostgreSQL 30.4 version on a Flex server hosted on Azure. Not only by the advice we were helped upfront, but also in afterwards, we got a lot of support in installation of the server and in the configuration of the server. It could be a next finish session, but it really helped us on topics like vacuum, auto vacuum settings, since we do a lot of updates and occasionally also deletes on the data in order to maintain our data quality. That creates some load on the server that we want to get rid of. So it was great support from Microsoft on PostgreSQL Server that we still have good contact with. So another, I think, a very good benefit of using PostgreSQL as your core database technology. So what did it mean for us, that migration? It meant that we saw an 80 to 90% performance improvement in query times. It really was breathtaking how fast our normal queries now were executed, and the performance was incredible. It also increased our scalability possibilities, since we experienced that a Flex server is easier to scale up than a single node server. So we're very happy with our current Flex server. And this enabled us as well to run a smooth operation despite an increased activity. And it never goes as slow as today, as we always say. And the PostgreSQL database is always there as a trusted companion to help us on our journey to stay this data-driven company with data-driven products. So Elena, I think this is a great handover then back to you to talk about the feature that we use on PostgreSQL Server.
Thank you so much, Bob. So in the beginning, one of the features that we have used the most is the use of functions and trigger functions within our PostgreSQL. So in the first beginning, our reporting analysts used just Python scripts in order to be able, when we were just at the beginning with a couple of clients, they were able to transform the data, but then we needed to store this data and enrich it. So in order to do that, we have used a lot triggers and trigger functions. So how do we do that, or how we utilize this? We use in order to automate certain type of operations as soon as the data arrive at the tables. So these operations can be, for example, refresh materialized views that are there later being used in order to serve the data to the datasets of Power BI. We also collect some common dimensions that we use across different clients by inserting these into other tables. Data that we have should be always auditable, and we should always know where does this data point come from and where it gets to be visualized. So auditing is a very important part for us, and we use trigger functions in order to generate specific markers showing where the data started, when it was processed, who did the transformations, and when it gets to be served. So, and finally, we do after insert updates, which are basically we need to create some other transformations, some other columns in order to be able to enrich this data. We have also used the trigger functions in order to do this. So the next step into the features that we have used are the use of constraints. So one of the things that Bob has mentioned, which is really important for us, is being able to have transparency for our clients on which data that we have, how it was transformed, how we ensure that we show specifically to the client the data that he needs to see. Therefore, we use heavily constraints. So these constraints have been designed from the business perspective in order to ensure that these rules that are the most important for us in order to be able to be transparent, be auditable, and to show that every calculation that we show, it's perfectly backed. We have constraints in order to ensure that this business rule are in place, prevents wrongly data being inserted in the places that we don't want, prevents duplicated data, and we also safeguard the data quality throughout these constraints. For example, we have specific methods that we have to develop in-house in order to hash the data and create specific identifiers that we then use in order to audit this data. So this limits the amount of errors that it could arise, and therefore ensures that all the data that we show is perfectly matched with the client's expectations. Finally, the last features that we have made also use is the use of foreign data wrappers. Sometimes we need to obtain data that comes from throughout the different databases that we have. So therefore, we use data wrappers in order to distribute the information from these databases into a central unified place where we can set up benchmark pools, where we can further analyze this data, and we can ensure that the data quality that we are providing is perfectly according to the standards that we want to achieve. Finally, one of the features that we use throughout all our databases is the use of calculated columns. When at the beginning we set up these features, well, Bob was there at the beginning, so he was in charge of setting up mostly all of these features. So one of the things that we did was have calculated columns. So this allows that as soon as the data gets to be inserted into these tables by the reporting analyst, we can further enrich this data by using these simple modifications, allow us to build prototypes, allow us to move faster, and all of these features that we have shown, we have used them a lot because our basic problem that we were facing is to be able to achieve the growth that we wanted to have. So in this case, SQL Server has been able to provide us the ground in order to be able to grow, to sustain our operations, and to scale, knowing that we have a backup in the technology. So hand it over back to you, Bob.
Well, one final feature I think that we have not mentioned yet, Alan, it's about the indexes.
That's true.
We used the feature throughout our databases is the use of indexes in order to highly improve our query performance and as well to enforce uniqueness of the data in our columns. So we use multiple columns to enforce our indexes, and this is a standard feature that we use for PostgreSQL and really helps us to improve our company performance. Great. Sorry for stealing the show, Alan.
No problem.
All right. So this then brings us to our key takeaways from PostgreSQL Server Flex Server host that we host. It's an extremely reliable and scalable partner for our company. As also just mentioned by Alan, we do a lot of prototyping before things goes into production. It really helps with PostgreSQL that it's such a flexible database technology with a lot of functionalities, especially the calculated columns since Postgres 13. It can also handle a lot of workload without compromising our performance. For us, that as a growing company, it's extremely important that we can always rely on the performance that is being promised. And the customization and product experimentation, as mentioned, is really important. With all the talented people that we were able to hire, who already practiced in university on PostgreSQL databases or run their own pet projects at home on PostgreSQL database technology, enabled us to grow very fast as a company and make the success that we have. So in short, PostgreSQL is one of the cornerstones of the success of Digital Decisions and later the DIC within Ubiquity. This brings us to the end of our talk. Really want to thank you for taking the time to listen to what we to our experiences and to our journey with PostgreSQL databases. We hope you choose as well for PostgreSQL, or that you have learned something new about how you can grow your company faster and get better performance on PostgreSQL databases. So with having that said, thank you for watching, Alan. Great having you here at the same time on this conference.
It was great. I mean, like, it was you set up most of the system and Postgres database, and now it's the center of our technology. So it's really good to be here and sharing our experience. So fist bump. So probably.
Fist bump.
It's really
All right,
difficult.
thanks, Adam. All right, ciao, everybody.